Good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk about Angular modules. So it's going to be a little bit advanced, but hopefully everyone can take something out of this. So let's start with a short introduction, followed by exotic slides, and then try to do some live demo. This is a terrible picture of me. This is what I'm doing. I'm working in a company named 500 Tech. Where we help companies to build frontends. So my talk is from my own experience working on large-scale Angular applications. I'm also the founder of the frontend band. So if there is any musicians in the crowd, please talk with me after the talk or on the after party. It's going to be very, very exciting project. So you should check it out. All right, one last thing. Starting next month, there is a new group, a new developer group named 12. Maybe you've seen it on Twitter, maybe you've seen it on Facebook, maybe it's the first time you've seen these slides, but it's going to be something very, very different. So if you find it interesting, check out this Telegram channel on the bottom right corner and stay tuned. Just before I begin, I want to take a moment because not everything is perfect in our world, and tell you that I'm also volunteer at the AWU group. Who heard about it? No one? All right. It stands for Anonymous Windows Users. So if you or one of your friends using Windows, please talk to me or call this number. We can help you. All right. And this is a real number. It's going to be a live demo. Who's using Visual Studio Code? All right, I'm going to use WebStorm. Let's start by talking about modules in Angular. All right. So an Angular application is basically a collection of modules. If you read the docs or read a lot of blog posts or try to learn Angular by yourself, you probably heard that Angular building blocks is actually components, but components is just a small part of the deal. Of course, we've got components. We built our UI with components, but Angular, the concept of Angular is to build modules. So this is the most important concept that you need to understand if you want to take advantage of the real power of Angular. So modules, Angular modules, enable us to achieve those principles: encapsulation, extend our app, and code sharing. Right? They help us to separate our presentation from our data providers. I think this is the way I teach people about Angular. And if you look at this slide, for me, it makes sense. We've got components, directive pipes. This is our presentation layer. We've got services, routing, and guards. This is our data providers. And basically, that's it. This is Angular. But you take all of this and put it inside modules. All right? And when we talk about modules, we're talking about different kind of modules. Now, the API is the same. It's always an Angular module. But we give them separate rules. Try to think of your app as a collection of dedicated modules. Each module has one responsibility. All right? The most important modules are the feature module and the shared module. Now, it's very important to adopt this kind of terminology. It will help you think of your app in a different way. And we will see in the live demo some great tools that help you to achieve this. But let's start by defining those module categories. So the app modules, it's got only one rule: to initialize our app, and basically that's it. It doesn't need to export nothing. It shouldn't be depend on nothing except a core module and maybe a routing module. And its signature is basically one component you need to bootstrap, and that's it. If your app component doing more things than what's written, you probably need to refactor it. Probably. All right? The routing module. Yes, we separate our routing configuration to a different module. Makes sense. For me, I don't want to keep the module that's responsible of initialize my app and the module and the routing configuration. I want to separate them. I want to be able to refactor my routing without touching my root application module. So what is the core module? Every app got at least one, if not only one, core module. This is a module that contains our business logic. It got no dependencies, it exports nothing, and it's got no components at all. And it's okay to build a module which is a collection of services, collection of pure business logic, pure data. This way I can reuse it. All right? So this is the signature, no dependency, no exports, no declaration at all, just providers. The feature module. Feature module is a module that contains everything we need to build a certain feature. So it can contain business logic, it should contain UI, and all the services and the components that are part of the feature should be dedicated to this feature. Nothing is reusable. And it's okay to build a module that is not reusable. Sometimes people who just started with Angular and even experienced Angular developer trying to build everything reusable. Everything should be generic. All the modules, all our components should be generic. But it's okay, and you should build modules that they are private use cases. And this is the feature module. All right? The shared module, most of the time in my systems, I name this module a shared UI components, because most of the time it contains UI components, which is supposed to be shared and supposed to be generic. So the signature, which will be a lot of declaration, no dependencies, just the common module that I need from Angular. It will export everything because it's a shared module. It contains shared components. All right. A well-structured Angular app, you can think about it like this. We've got our app module. It's only depend on the core module, which contain our business logic, our core business logic, just services. It lazy loads feature modules, and feature modules can depend on shared modules. Yes and no. The question was if I got any correlation between my folder structure and the app. In the days of AngularJS, we used to structure our app to reflect our routing. But in Angular, we're trying to keep it as flat as possible. I want to be able to see all of my feature modules inside my app flat. All right? All right, good. So we learned that we can define our modules and we can use those terms. And I didn't invent those terms. You can find it in the documentation. You can find it in other places and in the tools that I'm going to show you in a second. The next thing I want to talk about, and then we'll try to do a simple live demo, is how to build a module that we can reuse. But SOLID stands for 5 principles. It's coming from the world of classic object-oriented. And I want to focus on 2 principles, the single responsibility and the open-close principle. And when we say single responsibility, if we're talking about Angular module, a module should have one and only one reason to change. That's the reason I'm separating my routing to a separate module. Because I don't want to refactor my routing and touching other modules, other feature modules that doesn't have anything to do with routing. The second principle I would like to speak about and show you a live demo is a module should be open for extension, which means that if you're crafting a module in Angular, you should think about how can I extend it? How can I reuse it in other contexts? So I'm going to generate a new project. Let's call it just solid for now. I'm going to use the minimal flag. All right, so the minimal flag will generate an Angular project, a minimal Angular project, which means basically no testing. So it's going to be a lightweight version of an Angular CLI project. Everyone can see the code? You can see inside my source folder, I've got my app folder, I've got app component and app module. And if you take a look on the Angular CLI JSON, you can see that a lot of defaults specifying inline style, inline template, no specs. The package JSON will contain nothing that related to testing. So it's very small and focused. And you can generate this kind of project if you want to play or test something, or you're just building something small and you don't need all of this jazz around your app. Let's go to localhost. For 200, we've got an Angular application, and I want to talk with you about how can we build a module that can be extended. So for this, let's generate a module. ng generate module. Let's call this module network logger. All right, and this network logger will create a service. Actually, we're not going to create a service. We're going to create an HTTP interceptor. This module is responsible of logging our HTTP calls. So for this, I'm going to create a class. I'm not going to use the CLI for creating classes too much. Just a new file. Let's call this file net logger. When you go into presentation mode, you got issues. So we're going to export a class. Let's call this class net logger. We're going to implement the HTTP interceptor. So we're going to implement the intercept method. We're going to return next with our request. And let's do come on. Oh yeah, thank you. And here we're going to just log the request. All right. So this is how you build an HTTP interceptor. This is the first part of building an HTTP interceptor in Angular. You're just building a class. We are going to I'm trying to talk and code. So under providers, I'm going to use this token, HTTP interceptors. I'm going to use the class that I just created, net logger. I'm going to set the multi to true. We don't have any declaration. We don't need to import the common module. All right. And now I've got a module that's responsible for instantiate the net logger and will provide me logs when I'm doing some API call. Cool. All right. And the fun part about Angular modules that now if you want to use it, all you need to do is just this. Go to imports, import my, net logger module, and that's it. Now if I'll try to use the HTTP client to make an API call, I will see the log. All right? Easy and simple, and that's the beauty about modules. And I don't know nothing about this network logger module. Now let's say I want to extend it. Let's give it a try. Let's HTTP client module. Let's go right here inside our app module. Let's create a constructor, inject our HTTP client. If you see a mistake, please let me know. Let's try to do an HTTP get something. Let's take an API that actually works, like the JSON placeholder. So let's do a get subscribe. We'll take the result. We'll do nothing, just console log a result. And if everything is okay, right here you can see the HTTP logger in action. All right. Let's see how can we refactor this module to be able to extend it. All right, the Angular way, not the Java way, but it will remind you a little bit of Java. First thing, let's create a service. Let's create a service that let's call it default logger or console logger. Service.ts, and let's create an interface. Let's say that this interface, this logger, have only one method, log. It can be any type. And my console logger need to implement this logger. And we do a console log right here. Let's do a group. Let's call it console service, so you know it's coming from here. Group and all right. Now instead of hard coding the console log inside my interceptor, I'm going to inject my console logger. Console logger service. Let's inject it. Let's make it private. And I'm going to use it right here. This console logger dot log request. All right. Inside my module, I'm going to provide it, register it on my module. So console log service, and now everything should work as expected unless I made a mistake. In netlogger, yeah. Yep. Thank you. All right. So everything works as expected. All right. We've got this console log, the logger service. So now, if you want to use my network logger in another context and you want to provide your own logger, all you need to do is to come right here, import my network logger, but register your own logger. It will override my console logger. Got it? All right. Now let's do it something much more nicer than that. All right. If I want to register a provider that's going to override an existing provider, I need to use the same name. I need to use the same type. I need to use the same injection token. And it doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel right to me that in order to extend to replace this logger, I have to create a similar service with the same name and then provide it in order to override the default behavior. I don't know. Let's look right here. This provide HTTP interceptors multi-true. So what is this? What is this multi? Let's think about it. You can create a lot of interceptors, and you want all those interceptors to be instantiated and to be able to work. So Angular provides us a token, a built-in token, HTTP interceptors, which is a multi-token, which means that you can register a lot of classes under the same token. And Angular will use this token to use as an array of all the services, all your custom classes that you register under this name. And this is the Angular way to extend modules, to extend default behavior. So let's use this. Let's go to our network logger, and I'm going to create a file. I will call this file tokens.ts. Remember and stop bottom. And I'm going to export const. Let's call it HTTP loggers. It will be new injection token, and I can put some description in here. HTTP loggers. Now I've got a token. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my module, and instead of just provide my service as is, I'm going to use the same API. I'm going to use the token that I just created, provide HTTP loggers, use this class, which is the console logger service, and multi-true, which means that I can register more services under this token. So now if I go back to my netlogger, when you inject this console logger, you don't get just one instance. You get an array of instances. All right? Let's give it a try. Let's do it like this. I'm going to inject HTTP loggers, let's call it loggers, and let's log the loggers, which is very advanced. All right? If you're just a beginner, don't log your logger. All right. Let's see what we've got. All right. So as you can see, I've got an array of console loggers. So in this point, you might be wondering, why do I need all this inject and multi and blah, 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 but hopefully you'll see in a second. So I can get an array of loggers, so I can do something like this. Inject loggers, let's say private loggers, and right here, let's take these loggers for each logger. Just use it to log our request. All right? Let's see if it's all still working. Strange things happening. Logger is not a function. Where? What? Logger.log. Thank you. All right? Yeah, live coding, but it's fun. Real live coding, when you're doing real life coding, you're doing a mistake. This is my agenda. I never practiced before. This is real life. I don't want just to show off, to practice. Hey, see, I can code without mistakes. Everyone doing mistakes. All right, so everything working as expected. And now we've got a great feature. Take a look. If you want to use my network logger module and you want to extend it, just use token that I gave you. You can create your own logger. Let's create a class right here. Custom logger. I provide you an interface. So please implement my my logger interface, just to make sure that you're using the right method. Let's do like, to make sure it's this logger. All right. Custom. This is how you say custom in Hebrew. So now you can learn. And then you visit Israel and you say custom, and you don't understand why everyone left me. All right. Now, let's see how the magic happens. Now we can use this key, this provide HTTP loggers. I can use my own class, custom logger. Don't forget to say that this is a multi. Don't break the chain. And now, got some problem with the custom logger. You can see that both of them are working. So you've got a module. You don't know what's going up inside the module. Everything is encapsulated. But I give you a special magic multi-token. If you register your class under this token, I will use it inside my module. And Angular is using this API everywhere. You've got tokens that enable you to extend the default behavior of Angular. If you ever build a custom form control or a provider, you always register your class under an existing token. And Angular knows how to deal with it. In this example, I build a logger. I give you a multi-token. You can provide your own classes, and I'll use it. So it's a very simple demo, just to keep things, simple. Because for most of you, you say so. So it's like kind of a new API to use. If you want to customize it and make changes, it's up to you. I mean, it's your implementation. I just show you that you can use something that we call the multi-provider. You can use a token, and you can register a lot of services under the same token, which enable us to extend modules using dependency injection. How many of you use the router in Angular? Hopefully more than 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you. So when you bring in the router module, so we use the dot for root or for child. So let's see what's really going on behind the scenes. My module looks great, but I have a problem. I've got this console logger service, and I've got this interceptor, and I want my interceptor to be a singleton. I don't want, because we've seen that I can provide a service with the same name and then override the instance, and you don't want it to happen in your app. And because we are lazy loading everything, there is a risk that if you lazy load a module that depend on this module, on this logger, you will override an instance. So I want to make sure that this net logger will be singleton, just one instance, even if you lazy load modules that use it. The console logger service, I don't care. All right? I really don't care. So what I'm going to do is inside my network logger module, I'm going to provide you 2 static methods to create this module. Let's call the first one Tatuk. You can speak many languages. Static for root, because this is convention. And I'm going to return module with providers. And this static method will return, guess what? A module. So let's return this class with a set of providers. And I'm going to create another static method. I'm going to call it for child. And I want you to use for root only once in your app. So when you call for root, I want to provide you this service. All right? Like everything is usual. But in all of your lazy loaded module, I don't want you to override this interceptor. So I'm going to return you just this provider. And this is the secret behind for root and for child. Those are just static methods for creating a module in two versions. And you can control which providers you want to return. Got it? Cool. So now if I want to use my logger, I can come here and say network logger module for root. So I get the module with all my providers. And in all of my other modules, I'm going to use the for child. So I'm going to get the same module, but without the interceptor. So this way, I won't override it. Let's summarize. We learned how to build a module, and we use two techniques. We use the multi-provider feature in Angular, all right, in order to provide the consumer of the module nice AngularWay API to extend our module. And we also use those static methods, those factory methods, to provide our modules in two different versions to help us to avoid overriding singletons. Like here said, I'm also organized the Angular App Conference in Israel. If one of you want to give a talk and need some help to build a talk, please talk with me. Let's talk about the real world. And this will be the end of this talk, so don't worry. We learned a lot, and I think that's enough. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the tools that I'm using and see a very, very quick live demo without any real code, just tooling for generating a project. Tools that I'm using, Draw.io. Draw.io, it's an extension for Chrome, but it's actually a standalone app as well. I discovered it recently, and it's totally free. So if you're going for this module approach, it's okay to design before you code. Angular is complicated. We're building complicated applications. So it's okay to design. It's okay to have sketches like this, not just on the server side, all right? So I use Draw.io because it's simple and it's free, and it doesn't have all this overhead of all those enterprises solutions. And I use it as a standalone app, which is very nice. And I suggest you to check it out. Maybe there is a version for Windows as well. I don't know. And the most important tool that I want to show you just before we end this session is, let's talk about the concept. So we talked about modules. Let's talk about what's happened if you need to build more than one app in your company. If you're building more than one Angular project, you're probably duplicating code, or you're spending a lot of time trying to find useful ways to share code between your apps, because you probably can share a lot of code. So if an Angular application is a collection of modules, we can think of an app as a collection of other apps. And if we name it a little bit differently, so every application's got this. We've got the test, we've got the configuration, and we just got the collections of modules. And all of these modules, those libraries, can be reused. So an Angular app is actually a hub of reusable modules. So if I build a monorepo, I can design it like this. I only need one node modules. I don't need to duplicate it. All right? Makes sense? I will create different app modules, but all of them will reuse the same library modules. And I can have only one test configuration for all of this infrastructure, my multiple app infrastructure, and I can have only one build setup. Sounds great, but this is a lot of work. So the advantages of creating a monorepo is basically code sharing and reuse, one node modules, one build setup, and unified versioning. If I've got only one repo, every time you make a change, you need to test all of your other apps to see that you haven't broke something, and you need to push up a version. All right? So the last tool that I want to show you before we go home is from a company named Nerwell. We can talk about exactly who are they afterward. But you know what? Let's save some time. And I can show you that if you use this CLI, create NX workspace, and then the name of the app, this tool will generate multi-app infrastructure, monorepo, and a lot of other cool words for free. Let's look at a quick example. I'm not going to live code this because we don't have too much time. So I've just run this command, and what you get is this folder structure. Someone asked about folder structure before. This is a monorepo. I've got a folder named apps, and I've got here 2 apps. And I've got a folder named libs, and I've got here 3 libs. And if I want to create another Angular application, I can do an ng generate app and give it a name. Let's call it an admin. And this tool will create another app for me. And this is the standard Angular CLI application. And if I want to generate a module, a reusable module, I can do like this. ng generate lib. Let's call it utils. Enter. And the tool will generate an Angular module inside my libs folder. Now I've got multiple Angular apps that sharing and can use multiple libs module. All of them live on the same monorepo, the same infrastructure, the same testing configuration, the same node modules, the same everything. And if I want to launch or build just one of my apps, I can just do ng serve and the name of my app, like admin, and launch my admin app. And if I build my admin app, I will build this module and all of the other libraries that I depend on. So this tool was created by 2 Angular core developers. They don't work in Google anymore, but they still contribute to Angular. And this is a very sophisticated infrastructure that you get for free on top of Angular CLI in an enterprise grade application. It always came into a point when we looked for a way to implement our solution of how we can reuse most of our code because we are building multiple Angular apps. And Angular CLI support multiple apps. If you check the Angular CLI, there's no magic here, nothing special. All right? You can see it's an array of apps, and each app got its own configuration. And you've got configuration that all those apps sharing together. So check out this tool, and I think let's stop here. So first of all, I really hope that you learned at least one thing new about Angular today. If you want to follow me, this is my Twitter. All right, yeah. And that's it for now. No, let's save something for the next one. Please stop me because I can't stop talking. Thank you very much. If you've got questions, I'm still here because I'm living very far.